to put in your favorite book or your favorite young adult book to read with young people in the chat. But we're at 3:31, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our meeting. I'm excited to see all the faces here and thank everyone, including our board chair, Commissioner Kenyatta Bay, and all the staff who worked tirelessly to put together today's presentations. That said, I'll introduce myself. I'm Committee Chair Kalila Slater Harrington. I welcome you all to the November 7th meeting of Teaching and Learning Committee. If you have not already done so, please mute your phone. Anyone who does not mute their phone may be muted by the call moderator and removed from the call. Additionally, if you are not a board member or the CEO and her staff, please turn your video off. I will now read a roll call of the board to identify who is already on the call. Commissioner Kenyatta Bay.
Present.
Chair Ronald McFadden.
I am present.
Thank you. Members of the public who would like to provide public comment to this committee can do so by signing up beginning at 9 a.m. the Thursday before the meeting until 5 p.m. the day before or Monday before the meeting. Individuals or groups interested in providing comments to the committee may sign up one of three ways. You can contact our board office. I'll put the number in the chat. You can visit the board office at 200 East North Avenue, room 406, or you can email the board office at schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us. Up to 5 individuals will be given the opportunity to provide comments to the Teaching and Learning Committee, and speakers will be granted 3 minutes. All comments should address teaching and learning related issues. Sign up is not permitted the day of the meeting, so please be mindful and sign up in advance. In addition, the chat function during our virtual meetings will not be used as a tool for gathering feedback or answering questions from the public. If you have follow-up questions or feedback and did not sign up in advance, please provide them to the the board office, and the staff will respond to you. All right. Board Chair, did you have anything to add before we jump into the agenda today? All righty.
Well, this is also National School Psychology Week. And so we're celebrating our school psychologists this week as well, in addition to the book study and all the other great things that you mentioned earlier. So I want to make sure we acknowledge our school psychologists and folks that work in that area as well.
Excellent, excellent. Well, everyone, we have a packed agenda today. I want to give an opportunity and check and see if Commissioner Muhammad has joined us. We're expecting Commissioner Muhammad to join us today. He has not arrived.
He has, not yet. He in about 10 minutes or so, he'll be logging in, Commissioner.
Okay. Well, it looks like then we were going to make a shift to our agenda, but since he's not able to join us yet, we're going to have to jump on in to our fine arts presentation.
All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon, commissioners and community. My name is Jalima Alisea, and I am the Executive Director in the Office of Teaching and Learning, and I am happy to be with you this afternoon to share the Fine Arts update. So our presentation agenda for today, we're going to have an opportunity to, as we always do, start with the alignment to the board priorities as well as our district goals. We'll have an opportunity to hear about the fine arts investment for this school year. We'll also look at the Fine Arts Strategic Plan that we have shared in the past and provide some updates on specific priorities 1, 2, and 4. And then we have the pleasure of having one of our teachers, specifically our Teacher of the Year, share some highlights around the work of fine arts in our schools. And so as I shared the alignment with the strategic board priorities, this specific presentation is situated in priority 1, 2, and 6. And then with regards to the district goals, the fine arts update specifically aligns to City Schools' wholeness goal, more students feeling connected and supported at their schools. And with that, I have the pleasure of turning it over to our new Director of Fine Arts, Ms. Dia Hafiz Slayton.
Good evening. Our work in Baltimore City is a work of growth, and I am excited to be a part of that growth as the new Director of Fine Arts. The first slide that we are sharing as part of Chanel and my presentation is our purpose, the Fine Arts North Star. And I'm just going to lift up the part that resonates with me the most, and that is the focus to empower our students to be change makers and activists that our city, our country, and our world need. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our fine arts strategic goals are listed. Please note that these goals were not done in isolation. We collaborated with our fine arts partners in the community to develop these goals. Chanel Howard, our fine arts coordinator, is going to lift up and focus on goals 1, 2, and 4 for you tonight. Funding, staffing, and programming, investing in the fine arts. Those are the things that we are going to focus on tonight as well. Diversification of fine arts funds. This slide illustrates how we have had an opportunity to braid together funds in order to expand opportunities to more schools, students, and teachers. I'm going to kick it over to Chanel now, and she will report on this in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Dia. Next slide, please. Some of our foundation investments that we will talk about. So these are listed in 5: Arts Everyday Equipment Fund, Maggie McIntosh Legacy, Arts is Healing, National Endowment for the Arts, and Save the Music. But the ones that are highlighted in yellow are the ones that we'll be specific about today. Next slide, please. As you can see by this slide, from the inception of the Fine Arts Strategic Plan in 2018, school year 19, until the present, we've had a constant increase in investment in the Arts Everyday Equipment Fund, highlighting $125,000 this year for the Maggie McIntosh Arts Legacy Program through the state of Maryland. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail in just a moment. Next slide, please. A partnership highlight. So I told you we'd talk about it in detail, and here we are. We were able to have as a legacy project by Delegate Maggie McIntosh. For those of you who may not know, she was an art teacher in city schools prior to her work as a delegate for the state of Maryland. And when they asked her what she wanted her legacy to be, she mentioned specifically, called out specifically that she wanted to do some incredible work in city schools. And her legacy program has allowed us to do that. It's a total of $10 million. We are looking at that through 2 strategic investments of $5 million. The way that we have allocated those funds have been first through a pilot program where we chose 2 schools that were already heavily invested in the arts, just with the amount of money that they were allocated through their budgets. They were already making significant investments in the arts. And Dia, I'm gonna ask you one more time. I forgot again. What's the name of? We used to call them portfolio schools, and I keep forgetting it.
Annual reviews.
They are annual review schools. Thank you so much. and annual review schools. And these were Abbotston and Mary and Winterling were receiving schools. So based on that piece of criteria and given their already strategic investment in the arts, they were selected for our pilot program. We're very happy to announce that Mary and Winterling will be participating in their ribbon cutting in November. So please look out for an invitation to that. Additionally, our first cohort of schools, these were schools that were chosen through application. We had 17 schools apply. 6 schools were invited to a second round of interviews. And from those 6 schools, these 3 schools emerged as having the strongest applications. The historic Samuel Coleridge Taylor and Booker T. Washington Middle School for the Arts were selected specifically because of their work in establishing pathways for fine arts, where it'll align very tightly to COMAR. It'll give our youngest snickerdoodles grades K through 5 the opportunity to have expansive opportunities in the arts, as well as allowing our middle school snickerdoodles the opportunity for depth of study. In addition to allowing our high school students through the Baltimore School for the Arts to have depth of study in arts programming. Next slide, please. Our Save the Music partners are amazing every year. This year, we have an expansion of the project. You can remember from previous board updates that we've highlighted roughly 5 schools each year. This year, we have a total of 7, where 5 of those are elementary schools that will be receiving the general music package. North Bend, Marian Winterling, Thomas Jefferson, Highlandtown 237, and Sandtown Winchester Academy. Very excited about the inception of a middle school package, and that will be for band instruments that will go to Connections, a community-based art school 5020. And then also our high school package, we are so excited about this. We get to allocate $60,000 of music sound equipment to Mergenthaler. We all call it Mervo for short. So we are very excited about that as well. Next slide, please. Staffing trends. I always say that I'm excited about this next slide, but it's always the next slide, and I say the same thing, but we're just really excited about the work that we're doing overall in fine arts and city schools. And my joy is that in these next slides that I'll be talking to you about, you'll see how strategic investment through our district office has allowed us to make increases in ways that we've outlined that we would do, which includes an increase in certified fine arts instructors district-wide, an increase in instructors by content, as well as central office structure with the director of fine arts. Next slide, please. Here it is, family. Proof in the pudding. From the year 2017 to 18 through the present, and highlighting specifically this year is because of a number of reasons. One, this was the inception of the Fine Arts Strategic Plan. This was also when we saw disinvestment statewide in our school system. And as we have seen the increase in Kerwin funds, we've also been able to track the increase in staffing, where over 143 arts-related teaching positions were added from school year 2017 to the present. Next slide, please. We'll take a breath. This slide shows certified teachers by discipline, and as you can see, there's been an increase pretty much overall, and we can see some marked increase, I'd say, in the number of dance and drama teachers that we've increased over the last few years as well. So we can acknowledge that it's not nearly where it should be, but it's not where it was, and that's where we're most proud of. Next slide, please. And one of the things that, and you've heard 3 times already, I'm going to tell you a 4th time, we're very excited about the addition of our Director of Fine Arts over the, our Director of Fine Arts. Over the last 4 years, we were able to grow our structure from a dot, that was a single coordinator position, to a square. And that is with the addition. So now our office is 4 coordinator and myself. 2 education specialists, and then also our Director of Fine Arts. Next slide, please. we are going to highlight our Fine Arts Strategic Plan goals, specifically goals 1, 2, and 4, where we are increasing in curricular and programmatic offerings, partnerships, and opportunities for students. Next slide, please. Goals 1 and 2, the highlights are at the bottom in terms of arts access for all city school students, increased course options and opportunities for students, increased AP opportunities in the arts, and improvements in arts curriculum. Next slide, please. This slide is one of the most dope slides that we have in our deck, where we can proudly say that we have 341 arts programs district-wide. And you can see our graphic shows you the breakdown in terms of fine arts discipline as well as grade band. And I'll let you sit with that for a second. Thanks, Mary. Next slide, please. Our improved arts curricula, and I promise I will go into more detail about this when we have our opportunity to talk about specifically how we've improved that arts curriculum when we come back for our curriculum updates. Next slide, please. The work of broadening the Fine Arts Office or expanding the Fine Arts Office is inclusive of tagging on to other district-wide initiatives. And this one specifically being through the office, our GAL office, that's the expansion of pre-AP and AP classes for our snickerdoodles. And so this slide will show you 253 of our students are enrolled in pre-AP arts courses, and that the breakdown is there for you as well. And then also 192 of our snickerdoodles are enrolled in AP opportunities. Next slide, please. And then for goal 4, basically the highlight is I'm going to talk to you about our growing partnerships and then also our expanded summer opportunities. Next slide. I would also like to highlight too all of the artwork that you see and the pictures. These are of our babies engaged in the work. And so I always want to give space to them to say that we're very much proud of what they're doing. So some of these, most of these, I think, actually are names that you are familiar with seeing in terms of partnerships for fine arts in our district. One of the things I want to highlight, though, is that although these are longstanding partners with our district, their work is significantly changing to better situate itself more to the needs of our students. And I'm very proud of that. And specifically our partnership with the Lyric, where this is the first year of many years where they have reinstituted their student matinee programs. And I'm proud to say that we packed out the house. The majority of 2,200 seats were yielded to Baltimore City Public Schools. So I'm very grateful for their partnership in that work, as well as, we mentioned Save the Music Foundation, as well as the Walters. We can go on. I think that the significant part about this slide basically is just to say that although these are longstanding partners, they are not doing business as usual as it relates to our students, and we're very happy about that. Next slide, please. Our summer opportunities. So we see SALA, which is also provided by Arts for Maryland, another longstanding partnership. We're so happy to talk about Fine Arts Camp in its second iteration. This was our second summer doing that, where we were able to accommodate 151 scholars across every grade band, and we were really pumped about that. Specifically, our work to debunk the idea that artists have to starve if they want to stay true to their true love and inspiration. And that was through specific partnership with the YouthWorks program through the mayor's office. And so we're proud of that. Our Spanish immersion camp, which sat 89 students. That camp is everything that happens in that camp is in Spanish. So there's that part, which, allowed us to capture a part of our student population that has a growing and developing need to be connected to the work of our Office of Fine Arts. And then also, it also gave them the opportunity to connect more deeply in technical theater opportunities. And then also our Alvin Ailey Dance Camp. Next slide, please. here is where I get the opportunity to introduce one of my most favorite people in the entire world. This is not a picture, however, of Mr. Perry. This is a picture of Mr. Eldridge at Hamilton. Another amazing music teacher. We'll bring him to talk to you next time. But Mr. Perry is going to share some highlights about the impact of the Fine Arts Strategic Plan, several of our initiatives, and just his work overall as a staying power in middle school. So Mr. Perry, I yield my time to you.
Good evening, Mr. Perry.
Good evening, and thank you for having me to the Teaching and Learning Board. This is an awesome opportunity. I'm so glad to do it. I'm supposed to speak on a few things, and I'll just jump right into it as I only have 7 minutes, so I'm gonna chop that down to 5 so that we can get on out of here. Well, I've been working in Baltimore City Public Schools for the last 10 years. This is my 11th year. Super excited. I have been blessed to be named the Teacher of the Year. This is so mind-blowing still. The importance of the arts is real simple. Without it, our kids, they're bland. Without it, our kids, they're not thriving as they could. Without the arts, y'all, the scientific evidence is already there. The research, the data already shows it. So let me talk about my experience. From my perspective, I remember middle school band, and I remember my first opportunity to play an instrument. I remember how it pushed me to practice my instrument, but then I had to learn how to balance my homework. I graduated number 5 in my class in high school. Fast forwarding, I applied to Berklee College of Music. I got in. All of these experiences from middle school to high school with the music, it kept pushing me to bigger and greater things, right? And so for my students, I'm seeing the exact same thing. I'm seeing them, although they may not go right into music, or they may not go into music at all, I'm seeing the discipline from coming on time, really being excited about school again. Because let's be honest, math, it bores some. Science, it bores some. ELA, it bores some. But when they go to a specific art that they choose, many of my students have had a reason to come to school and do well. So I have a student right now that's actually working with me. I've been working that long, Lord have mercy. I have a student that's working with the ORCIDS program. She's now an assistant coordinator, assistant program manager at Marianne Winterling Elementary School. And she started in my band. She wants to go into childhood development, so that's great place. That's a great place for her. She left Booker T salutatorian. Now, like many of our students, she had to overcome, oh, sorry about this announcement.
Alicia Epps, if you're in the building.
There we go. Still at school just let out, so that's the announcement. But as she has been progressing through high school, as she was progressing through high school, she had some pretty significant challenges. But one thing that kept her coming to school was the fact that she was a part of BSA. She had to make sure she knew her music, and she got a degree. So I should say diploma. And so now she's in the process of looking at her options for school, but she's not just sitting doing nothing. She's actually working. Again, we can go all day and talk about the importance of the arts and how we're preparing students. And so I just kind of want to jump to the next one, because the Office of Fine Arts, they're making it so that students are successful. The students are the focal point. But inside of these goals that she's talking about, there's one that helped me individually from my experience, and that's the professional development for teachers. I remember in my first year, I was unable to be successful. I just got to be honest. Mr. McFadden, he is on here, and he was my arts team lead. I had 6 students on stage, and we had to stop in our performance. I needed those professional developments that the Office of Fine Arts have offered to make sure that I was going to get back on track, right? The opportunities to collaborate with my colleagues, it set me on a path of success because there were so many things that I didn't know. And that's been one of the things, a part of their strategic plan, and how they've been just helping me through this process. It was Dr. Schneckenberger, and then it's been since then Mrs. Chanel Howard, and she has just been phenomenal. She's come to my classroom. I've had other mentor teachers come give me advice and help me out with different things, to the point where last year I was able to be a mentor teacher through NTSI and bring in the new cohort of music, arts, fine arts teachers. And it was a phenomenal experience. This is what the teaching and learning can do for our teachers. Because my thing is, we have all kind of things in place for the students. We need to develop teachers. That's been my thing for this whole, my entire Teacher of the Year application. Can we please develop teachers? Because if you help 5 teachers, you're probably going to help 5,000 students. So as I'm talking about my experience in the Office of Fine Arts, we just received the MMAC, Maggie McIntosh Artistic Center grant. Oh my God. Truly, oh my God. This is phenomenal. We've been walking around the building. We've been talking about the things we're going to fix. We're going to get practice rooms for these kids. State-of-the-art things that should be given to every child. So what is it going to do for my students? It's going to afford them the opportunity to excel like their classmates in other districts, like their classmates in other countries. And so for me, I'm just thoroughly ecstatic regarding the opportunity that's going to come for the arts, for the theater, for choir, for my band program. I'm excited about practice rooms, y'all. We ain't in the hallway anymore. Oh my goodness, that's phenomenal, right? And then I kind of want to end, not kind of, but I've actually already hit on pretty much everything that I've wanted to hit on. Again, the fine arts office expanding is phenomenal for the district. We have so many teachers that need help, and we have to give them the resources that they need. And so with the strategic plan that the Fine Arts Office has put in place, we are seeing teachers that take advantage of it, because that's another thing. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? Those that take advantage of these opportunities, you can see them thriving. You saw Mr. Eldridge. I went to Morgan with him. It was phenomenal. He was doing his thing at Morgan, and now we're colleagues again, or I should say students again, because we're forever students, right? So I'm not going to ramble. I'm just going to wrap it up by saying I have thoroughly enjoyed my time teaching, growing, learning, putting students first, and now able to mentor teachers. And I am running out of time. And so I just thank you for this opportunity to share what my experience has been. Other than that, I've beat my 7 minutes. I have a clock going because I was told, make sure you're early. So, Ms. Howard, I give it back to you, and I thank you all again.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Perry. It was incredible hearing your powerful words and your testament to the incredible work that not only our fine arts department has done, but members of the community that really support city schools with fine arts programming and our North Star moving forward. And so Fine Arts on the Horizon, we are looking forward to winter concerts at the district office, where we're able to showcase and highlight the many talents of our brilliant young people. We also have Fine Arts Month. There'll be a second annual high school film showcase, so please look forward to that. More information to come. And then our first academic dance symposium. So those are some things that we're really looking forward to this year. Please be on the lookout for information regarding those so that you can come and support us in celebrating our brilliant young people and their many, many talents in the area of fine arts. And so with that, we will close and open it up for any questions that our board commissioners or community may have for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that fantastic presentation. I am excited and curious and anticipating all the good that is going to come. My fellow commissioners, both themselves are steeped in the arts and are treasures themselves. So I want to, I have a comment, but then I want to pass it over first to Commissioner Bay and then to Chair McFadden. My comment is that in future iterations of the strategic plan, I really would like to see how the arts are being integrated into the education journeys of our special needs students, and how it's being used therapeutically to assist them in their educational advancement. And so in future presentations, particularly the one around curriculum, I would love to see that. With that said, I will pass the comments over to Commissioner Bay. I'd ask that we keep it brief because we are actually a little over time.
Good day. How you doing? First of all, let me thank you guys. You guys have been lifted up a tremendous mission, and you have worked very diligently. As a matter of fact, when you were listing the board priorities, board priority 3, I think, should be in there because we can create all these great ideas and goals and capabilities, but we don't have the facility in which to support that. That becomes a problem. So we need to look at that. The strategic plan is, as I'm looking at it, you're still your same strategic plan. You're working on development of a 2.0. Am I correct? Yes. How far along are we? I do need to be brought up to speed on that because we're looking at the old strategic plan with the areas of improvement that you're looking at, right? Am I correct in that?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Kenyatta Bay, we are in the process of constructing strategic plan 2.0. It is in the process of review right now with our chief. So as soon as it is done walking through that process, we'll be happy to present on it.
Yes, I'd ask to be updated on a consistent basis on your progress on that. I'm just curious. I'm just nosy. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I would like to know where we are and what areas that we are looking forward to. As I look at your distribution of funding, I'm looking at $450,000 out of ESSA grants, which are disappearing. You know, how are we replacing that becomes a question. The general funds that probably needs to increase, maybe. I don't know how we're gathering or distributing those funds, but they need to really, because what we're getting, and I do need to get some sort of idea of the numbers of fine and performing arts to other programs. Okay, and I want to make sure that it's equitably being distributed. How is funding distributed? I'm sorry, for these various partners. Who makes those decisions? Do the partners make? Usually, the partners in combination with city schools make those decisions, because I'm seeing certain areas that may be bolstered. You know, we look at the tradition of where the arts are and what we put monies into. And as I look at the development of a cross-curricular sort of venture, I'm looking at what areas of the arts we can actually pull stronger from. I looked at also the staff increase. I would like to know where the staff is being equitably distributed. Okay, is it being, I'm seeing key schools and I'm loving that. I'm loving what's happening with these schools. But there was a question of not school improvement as far as we've done this much in the arts, but how about school need? Okay, and that's where I'm looking for staff development in those areas. And that's
Commissioner Bay.
That's about it. 1 and 2. Thank you. I'm sorry, I have a bunch of notes and I'll be glad to share with you on another meeting. But those are some of the key things that come to my mind, especially money distribution, resource distribution. I'm sorry, not money distribution, resource distribution. I want to make sure there's equity throughout. But you've done a fabulous job. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Excellent. And you're asking that as a follow-up, right? Not to be entertained right now.
If there's anything that anybody wants to add or to clarify, they can, but I basically want to see a follow-up on this because we are moving to a new venture.
Commissioner Harrington, may I say one thing?
Yes. Sure, absolutely, please.
I appreciate the space. Thank you. Just to, I think, the majority of your points, Commissioner Kenyatta Bay, I can offer this. One of the things that we are heavily invested in as an Office of Fine Arts this school year is to be able to tell more of our story through data. And I think that that will answer some of the questions that you have, especially as they relate to staffing and the distribution of staffing. That's all, and we're just going to look at the data to see what it tells us, and then we'll be able to plan more actionably once we have that in space. And then also making note of your questions around money distribution. Thank you so much, Commissioner Harrington.
Great, thank you. I can't tell you how inspired I am by the presentation. Commissioner Chair McFadden, do you have anything to add?
Just briefly, good afternoon to the team. Thank you. It is always a pleasure to see my colleague and Morgan alum, Mr. Jared Perry, who is our Teacher of the Year, who I'm just so proud of. Just him, all the work that he's doing, but his commitment to our children is unparalleled. So it's always nice to be in the same space. But in a follow-up to Commissioner Bay, with the with our ESSER funds, with our COVID relief funds, us transitioning out of those resources, I know in the past there's been some guidance for school leaders as to how they can hire and prioritize resources. I'm curious to know if that will continue, if we give guidance to schools and school leaders for how they can ensure that students have the resources in the arts that they need. That doesn't have to be something that is discussed now, but certainly a follow-up I'd be interested in. I know that there has been budget guidance before, and now more than, now versus the most recent years that we've had the support of COVID relief funds, what will our guidance be for those school leaders to make sure that there's no, we don't want any gap, right, in instruction and programming. And so I'd be interested to know that. I also see that there's a large amount of students that are involved in visual arts instruction and programming. I know that you all are working on the Strategic Plan 2.0. I would love to see what the plan is just K through 12 for, building more programs outside of the fine arts. Particularly our ensemble programs. I know we have partnerships, and thank you all so much for highlighting those partnerships, but how are we prepping our elementary school students to be prepared for the middle school ensemble programs with this Maggie McIntosh resource, right, that we have once in a lifetime, right, for the arts? How do we really think that through over time so that our young people are, and it's nice to see the partnership with Samuel Coleridge Taylor. So that I'd be interested in. It's also nice to see the teachers and the increase of fine arts teaching. It seems like there is some retention happening of some sort. It would be nice to hear that illuminated. As Mr. Perry mentioned, the need for teacher training and development. It sounds like that is a significant area of focus for many of our teachers we know. It'd be nice to hear some of that moving forward, because it's clear that that is happening, right? That you're retaining teachers. But what comes out of maybe the work that you're doing can impact another content area as well, as it relates to retention. And then I'd also, and this is it for me, Commissioner Slater Harrington, just credit earning courses at the high school level. Where are we with ensuring equitable access to our high school students and preparing them for college and career outside of our schools that have a more intense focus in the arts, right? Like a School for the Arts, or even our city colleges and like what happens in our other schools. There's great things happening at Patterson. There's great things happening at a lot of schools. So I'd be interested in knowing what that credit earning course plan is to make sure that we're reaching as many students as possible, and that we have the staff resource, the human resource, to meet the need of our students. Doesn't have to be answered now. I'm certainly happy to meet with fine arts folks. You all know that. So I welcome that too. Just to, as we're moving into budget season, as a whole, it'll be nice to have dialogue around those things so that we know as governors how to best support you all and to best support our students.
Thank you, Chair McFadden. Listen, if you don't hear anything else, you have commissioners here who are lovers and supporters of the arts, the fine arts, and deeply committed to the work that you're doing and supporting the work that you're doing. We have our follow-ups because we are curious and we want to advance the work and support the advancement of your work. So we'll look forward to your responses to our follow-up requests, and most certainly looking forward to your next presentation around curriculum. Thank you so much. Before you go, I do want to acknowledge, I saw a friend of the arts in as an attendee and guest today. Alicia Lee is here, I think is one of the partners, has joined us and is a great supporter of the arts. So thank you, Ms. Lee, for joining us and supporting the work here at Baltimore City Public Schools. All righty, I also want to recognize, thank you all. We're going to move on to our next presentation. If you are following along on our agenda, this may seem peculiar, but we're going to move an agenda item, one of our compliance presentations on behavior and discipline, up to the next slot. So I apologize, staff, for the unexpected move. But we have staff who are presenting at a conference. And so we're going to honor their need to be there at that conference and allow them to move their compliance report up to the top. So before we do that, I want to acknowledge that Commissioner Muhammad has joined us. Commissioner, you're here. I want to make sure. I believe Commissioner Muhammad is here.
Yeah, he was here. Looks like he dropped off, but he was here.
Okay. All righty. So we'll reach out and we won't hold up the presentation. Director Lori Hines, if you would proceed, and we'll make sure Commissioner Muhammad is joining in.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for making accommodations. And Chair McFadden, I saw your little symbol like this. I'm going to start off like this in love. So good afternoon to everyone. I will be presenting today. My name is Lori Hines. I'm the Director of Student Conduct and Attendance. And I will be presenting to you today JKA Compliance Report. Next slide, please. And so again, annually, the JKA compliance report must be presented before the Board of School Commissioners and other leadership. And so that is our purpose here today, to present you with the data and the information around suspensions for school year 22-23. Just a little bit of an overview around the compliance regulations. It is in board, it can be found in board policy JKA. And there are some regulations or some requirements that we must, that we are required to report. And so you will find them here, that we must make a report annually, and it must include trend data by violation. A lot of our slides, because this is a lengthy, and we've cut the data in so many ways, a lot of our slides you can find in the appendix, but we will go over the main components of our suspensions on today. But you can see it cut in many other ways in our appendix. It also, and listed here, it shows some of the ways in which it must be, in which the data must be reported. Next slide, please. Can you go to the next slide, because one of the other slide jumped. If you can, yes. And so this slide shows the remaining items that must be reported. There was an additional item when we made revisions to board policy JKA last year, it was added on that in this compliance report, it must be reported the reportable offenses and the school disruptions that were reported in school year 22-23. So we have added that component onto this compliance report, as well as the use of exclusion and physical restraints. My colleague from special ed, Ms. Denise Mabry, is here, and when we get to that portion of the compliance report, she will report out on the exclusions and physical restraints, as well as some of the behavioral interventions that we have implemented, which you can find in JKA, the regulation RA. If you could go to the previous slide, please. Thank you. So this is just an overview of the overall suspension data for school year 22-23. So there were a total of 7,358 out of school suspensions and expulsions. So this was this number is higher than our pre and our post-pandemic trends in suspension. There was a 23% increase in suspensions from school year 2021-22, which was our first full year back after post-pandemic. And so I'll talk a little bit to that point a little later in the in this presentation. And there were 307 instances of students that were excluded due to being out of compliance for immunizations. And that was a decrease, a slight decrease from school year 21-22, which we had 311 students who were excluded because of immunizations. I do want to note as we go forth in this data that because of the pandemic, there were no suspensions that were reported between April 2020, because you remember we left from school to be at virtual, and our whole world changed in March of 2020. So there were no suspensions from April 2020 through March of 2021. And so I just want you to keep that in mind as we're looking at the data. Next slide, please. Okay. And so also as we're looking at the data, there are going to be a few rules that apply to the following slides that we will be looking at. And so one is a suppression rule. And so some of our data is suppressed because of our suppression rule, as well as that gap that I just spoke about from April 2020 to March 21. Some of that information is suppressed from those years because there were no suspensions during that time frame. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of a justification why we were seeing, especially last year, an increase in our suspensions. We had a big overhaul of our code of conduct. We actually did the overhaul of the code of conduct from various stakeholder input. And we did that, we worked on it last school year and intensely over the summer, and we did intense summer training. We had code of conduct trainings with our administrators, with our teachers this year, and it is ongoing. So we have not stopped that. We began the intense training this summer, but there were incidents that were happening within our schools, and our code of conduct, our disciplinary responses did not match, so that administrators were able to keep their buildings safe and orderly. And so we did an overhaul of the code of conduct so that some of the disciplinary responses, they would be able to give disciplinary responses that matched some of the incidents that they were seeing happening in our school, which led to an increase in our suspension. So I'll just give you one example. Last year, within the code of conduct, a fight, like if students got into a group fight, that would only be able to fit in the category of fight. And so for that, you were only able to give a short-term suspension to the two students who started the fight. And so there was a change because what we were seeing that there were a lot of group fights and student fights and people coming to schools and fighting in groups. And there was no consequence. Well, there was a consequence that we could give, but it did not match what the consequence that was able to be given in the code of conduct. And so we changed that. And so the group fights now fall under like attack on students. And so instead of just the two original persons who were fighting, it is now that you are able to like suspend that whole group. And so some instances like that, that's just one example where it did lend to an increase that we would see in our overall suspension numbers. Next slide, please. And so this is just a little bit of some trend data in regards to our total suspensions overall. And so you can see how our suspensions have increased over the last few years, minus that school year 2021, where the numbers are suppressed because of our lack of suspensions during that time when we were on virtual learning. Next slide, please. So I'll just give you just a little bit of a precursor and before we look at the actual slide of the data and how it's cut in each way. And so the first slide we're going to look at are suspensions by gender. And so we do note that while there are still more males that are being suspended over females, our disproportionality rate has decreased, and we are seeing a bit of a downward trend in the amount of males that are being suspended. Also, I wanted to note that new this year for our presentation, we have a third gender category, which is non-binary. So you can go to the next slide, please. And here you will see this data. It is broken down by gender. And so we have male, female, and non-binary. Our non-binary numbers are suppressed because of it was it was not a great number of students who identify as non-binary that were suspended. So those numbers are suppressed. Next slide, please. Okay. Here you will see our suspension by grade band. And so we also changed the grade bands just a bit so that we would be able to match grade bands as far as suspensions being prohibited. So we know that there is a bill that prohibits in the state of Maryland students in the grade band pre-K through 2 from being suspended, except when there are certain circumstances. And so here you see suspensions by the grade bands, the identified grade bands, pre-K through 2, grades 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and then grade bands 9 through 12. Next slide. Okay, and here it's a little bit different. They are students who are suspended by grade and gender. So not only is it their grade that is shown, it is also like how many males, how many females from each of the grade bands that we just talked about. You will see here as well. Next slide, please. And this is the same data, just by grade and by gender. Next slide. Okay, our next data that we're going to look at are suspensions by race and ethnicity. And so we are continuing to monitor our disproportionality around suspensions, but we did find that there was about almost a 2.5% decrease in our disproportionality rate around Black students being suspended. And so we are happy about that, and we plan to continue to move in that downward trend. Also, there was an increase in students that were Hispanic or of Latino descent, and we found that was very close to there's also an increase in the enrollment numbers of students around that who are Latino or Latino or Hispanic descent. And so those numbers match, they align with the enrollment numbers growing. The suspension, the rate of suspension is growing. It's aligned. It almost matches perfectly around their enrollment numbers increasing as well. So next slide. So here you will see the suspensions by race and ethnicity. Next slide, please. Next, we will look at suspension data by disability status. And so again, we are looking or monitoring very closely. We put things in place to monitor the disproportionality around students in special ed. We work very closely with our special ed office, and there is a person whose job, Ms. Ernestine Holly, I speak with her almost daily. And every time that a suspension comes in to our office for approval, then that student has an IEP. I consult with Ms. Holly, and that information is also sent to her immediately so that she can monitor that information and look at the compliance piece. That is different from several years ago when I started in this position. We were acting in a reaction as far as when students were suspended, and if they weren't in schools weren't in compliance or so forth, then the suspension would be like rescinded. Now we are doing that as soon as we get the suspension. We are having those conversations, and that information goes straight to Ms. Holly so that we can see what needs to be in place, or if anything was, violated, or the proper protocol was not implemented on the forefront in the beginning, as soon as the student is recommended for a suspension. And so we have seen about a 2% decrease in the disproportionality rate around students with disabilities being suspended, and we continue to monitor that and work on that disproportionality rate as well. Next slide, please. And so that is this data that you see, suspension data by students who are categorized as general education students and students with disabilities that have an IEP. Next slide, please. Okay, the next set of data, it shows us suspensions by date and date and duration of how many suspensions there were, like per month, what the percentage of suspensions were per month for that particular school year. And we find that the pattern has kind of remained the same as far as the month-to-month data for suspensions. So we can go in, and particularly our expulsions and our long-term suspensions, that remained in like a 1% range for our expulsions and our long-term suspensions. So if you go to the next slide, we can take a look at that data. And again, this is the percent of suspensions by month for that particular school year. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share with you, you may already know, or you may not know, what our definitions in our code of conduct, as well as the definitions for suspensions, are in COMAR. And so it is by the length of the suspension. And again, we are talking about out of school suspensions, meaning time out of school. And so for our short-term suspensions, they are anywhere from 1 to 3 days. And a school leader has the autonomy to make that decision. As long as it's supported by the code of conduct, they are able to assign a student on a short-term suspension, as long as they give them, the due process. That student can be anywhere from 1 to 3 days, and there is no prior approval that is required from our office. The next type of suspension is a long-term suspension that is anywhere from 4 to 10 days, and schools must call in and meaning when I say calling to get approval to actually do the long-term suspension. That is not a COMAR requirement, but that is one of our requirements in our board policy, and that was implemented back when Dr. Alonzo was CEO. And the reason for that was because we were seeing just too much inequity in the amount of times that students were being given between that 4 and 10 days. And so, for example, there would be a student at school A that would do an infraction, and that leader would give them 4 days. And there would be a student that would do the same exact infraction at school B, but that student would be given 10 days. And because we were seeing so much inequity in that we filtered it through our office. And so once the approval is given, we will discuss with the administrator, and there are certain questions we ask as far as, if the child has an IEP or not. Is this the child's first disciplinary action? What other things have been done up until this, point? And so based upon all of the information that we gather, we will come to a decision with the administrator, and we will let them know how many days it will be between the 4 and the 10 days. And then the next type of suspension is an extended suspension that is anywhere between 11 to 44 days. Again, there has to be prior approval from our office before that type of suspension is issued. And once the suspension is issued, the student and their family must come to our office and hold a suspension hearing. And at that suspension hearing, we will determine, or one of the specialists will determine, how many days between the 11 and 44 that student will be assigned. And then we know that there are certain infractions that require expulsion. So an expulsion is anywhere between 45 or more days. There are certain instances in which we're required by federal law, like if a student brings a handgun to school, whether that handgun is loaded or unloaded, then that student automatically receives an expulsion of 180 days, which is an entire school year. So let's say a student brings a handgun to school today, which is November the 7th, they would be expelled until next November the 7th, one entire school year. Next slide. So I just explained to you a little bit about the lengths of suspension and what types of suspensions there are. And so this slide is just showing you the suspensions by length by the types of suspensions, the number of suspensions that we had. And so you can see the greatest amount of suspensions that take place, that have always taken place, are short-term suspensions, those suspensions that are between 1 to 3 days. And again, there is no prior approval that is required. So school leaders are just able to assign the short-term suspensions, and there's no prior approval that is needed from our office. Next slide. This this data slide gives us information for a number of students with multiple suspension incidents. So this is a student who these are students who have more than one suspension. And so we see in grade 9, it is the greatest amount of students who have multiple infractions or multiple suspension incidents. Next slide, please. And so at this point, for the next 2 slides, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Ms. Denise Mabry, so she can give you the data on the use of physical restraints.
Thank you, Lori. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Denise Mabry. I'm the Director of Compliance and Due Process in the Office of Special Education. The use of physical restraints in schools have decreased from 190 in school year 2019 to 2020 to 6 in school year 22-23. And the reason for this decrease is that prior to 2019-20, we had to report on the number of physical restraints and seclusions in our non-public schools as well as our public schools. So the majority of this data from the 190 is in our non-public schools. Upon the updates for the House Senate Bill 1225, the use of physical restraints and seclusion, city schools no longer have to report on our non-public schools, and that's why you see the dramatic decrease to 6. So for the last school years, we maintained the data around 6 students that are restrained in our public schools. Next slide, please. And so this is just the data we just were talking about. As you see, in school year 2019-2020, there was 190 restraints and seclusions. However, we currently only report on the number of restraints for students in public schools. No schools, public schools should be secluding students. So we only report on the number of restraints. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise.
You're welcome.
Also required for this compliance report are some of the student behavioral interventions that we have implemented. And so we just wanted to share a few with you. And so there are 52, and a lot of this work, we partner in this work. This work is not done directly out of our office, but we partner with the Office of Climate, as well as our special ed office that Ms. Mabry was just representing. So we have 52 student wholeness specialists who work in schools with our students, and they work on Tier 1 social and emotional learning, and they operate wholeness rooms within our schools. We also partner with special ed around de-escalation training. And so last year we had 271 staff members from various schools who were taught around de-escalation methods and had that training. We also have advisory and morning meetings in every school, depending on if it's elementary or a high school. Morning meetings are more so for the elementary students, and advisories are more so for the high school students. But that has been embedded into every student's schedule, where they can come together and work on some of that SEL learning. As well as we held professional development. The Office of Social Emotional Learning held professional development for teachers last year, and there was an overwhelming response. And so we had 4,622 school-based staff that was trained over a period of about 25 sessions that we had during professional development days and sessions. And so all of those teachers had the opportunity to participate in that professional development, and that professional development was centered around restorative practices and social emotional learning and wellness. And teachers really did engage in that, and there was an overwhelming response and a very positive feedback. We received very positive feedback around those trainings. Next slide. Another thing that we had, another intervention that we had last year was we started this right after COVID in response to the many safety issues that we were seeing in schools and the incidents that were unsafe. And so we began our district mediations. We call them safety mediations, and they're held at district office. And so when there are incidents at schools that take place, sometimes in order to prevent suspension, and sometimes it's just because we want the students to be able to maintain a safe environment, and we want them to cohabitate in that school environment, but we want them to be safe. Like, that is our main priority. And so we hired a person specifically for the district mediations to take place. So again, the administrators, they will request a safety mediation from our school, from our office, and then their parents and the families and the students will come to district office, and we will hold a safety mediation there. It is a licensed social worker that does that. She's awesome. She just transitioned to a new role, and so we are actually, she's transitioning now actually to her new role as a manager, and so we are in the process of hiring a new safety mediation specialist for our office. But last year, we had a total of 96 meetings, safety mediation meetings that were held. There were 421 students who participated in those meetings. There were a total of 135 referrals that came in. And some of the meetings were not held because some of them did not qualify for the safety. That's why you see the difference in the total meetings held versus the total number of referrals. And sometimes the schools go back and they have to do some things at the school and some work at the school before they're actually, before it gets to our level. Because by the time it gets to our level, it's escalated to that level. And we want to hold that space to to mean something. Like by the time it gets to the district level, it is very, it's very serious, and it is a safety concern. And lastly, we had a total number of 48 schools that participated in the 96 meetings that were actually held. Next slide. So the next set of data is really, it comes from school police, but we are responsible for reporting it for JKA, and those are reportable offenses. And so I've placed, just in case you're not aware of what the definition of a reportable offense is. And so a reportable offense is, it's something that happens, it is a criminal offense, and it does not happen at school, on school grounds, at school events or any events sponsored by school. It happens outside of school. But because there is a law now, authorities like the police have to report to us. Like if we have a student that attends Baltimore City schools and they're involved in one of these crimes, it might not be in Baltimore, it may be in a different county, or it may be in Baltimore City, but it's just, again, not on school property during school time. It is required that they must report that offense to us. And so last school year, that is when we began collecting this data, and we had 44 reportable offenses that were reported to us, to Baltimore City schools last year. It is also required in this data that school disruptions are reported as well. And so last year, again, that is when that passed. It was kind of in the middle of the year. And so there were 4 school disruptions. And so the definition of a disruption is that the operation of the school will not be able to operate in its normal way because of this disruption. Okay, and so there again, last year, there were 4 school disruptions that were reported to school police. Next slide. And so just an overall summary, we did see a slight reduction in disproportionality compared to our school year 21-22. That is something that we are still working on as far as race, as well as students with disability. So we hope to see that that disproportionality continues to be on the decrease, and we're putting things in place for that. But overall, there has been an increase in our overall number of out-of-school suspensions. And again, that is, I shared with you earlier, a reason around that. But in response to that, also, we have done in-depth trainings beginning this summer, and we continue them now. So even throughout the school year, I've set up office hours with administrators every Friday, where they are just able to come on and to talk about incidents that may be happening, or how they should deal with particular incidents, or what supports we are able to put in place around our pre-K through 2 suspensions. Previously, before the pandemic, we had aides that in lieu of a suspension, we would send out an aide to be with that child so that they would not have to be removed from the actual school. We've put that back in place this year. However, there has been a challenge with finding the personnel. So we have the money in the budget in collaboration with special ed around those positions, but there have been some challenges in finding the actual aides, the personnel to fulfill that role. So we are working on that, and we are going to get that implemented again this year. And we are continuing our professional development as well. So again, I mentioned this summer, we had intense professional development around the changes to the code of conduct. And so we continue to have, we started off in the summer and the year, we were doing it twice a month. We gave a virtual option as well as an in-person option. And now we have moved to once a month around that professional development, but we are rotating it. So alternating the method. So 1 month it is virtual, like the month of October, it was in person. And so November, this month, it will be virtual, and then it will alternate each month around that professional development. And I believe that is the conclusion. If you could go to the next slide. Yes, that is the conclusion. But again, as I mentioned before, there are several slides. I didn't want to make it too long, but there are several slides that you can also see that we've cut data in different ways in our appendix that you can view as well. So at this time, if there are any questions or comments or concerns, I'll be happy to entertain them at this time.
All right.
I do want to say that one of the goals that I have around our office, because our office is student conduct and attendance. So we also have the major bucket of attendance, but around both of those areas, I really have a lens. I'm actually, I think Commissioner Harrington said it before, we're actually at a conference now around equity and around like racial equity. And so that is one of the goals of the office this year, to really have that continue with that restorative lens, as well as that equity lens around both bodies of work around attendance, as well as suspension. Because when the students come into our office for their suspension hearings, I mean, yes, it is a disciplinary response, but we are approaching the work in a way of what is the lesson and how can we move forward. And it's not so much of a punitive, because what we find oftentimes is the students have endured great trauma, and they're not to condone the behaviors, but how do we move forward from here in bringing restoration and so that they can be back in school learning. So I'm sorry. With that, I will.
Don't be sorry.
I will yield.
Thank you for that very thorough and thoughtful presentation. This is something that I care deeply about, as do the other commissioners. And so I'm sure we have a ton of questions. Commissioner Muhammad has joined us to ask some of the questions. Understand that some of the items will be for follow-up. I will yield to Commissioner Muhammad for his questions, and then I'll follow up with mine at the end.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, all. The presentation was very much appreciated. I look at all of the work that you guys are doing, and I'm thankful that the district has you. My question is really around how much more can we aggregate the data, because there are certain points that I'm extremely interested in, particularly with regards to the suspensions of our young people with disabilities. So are there particular types of disabilities that we find suspensions are being given more often than others? And again, I may not be able to receive this information now, but definitely want to give you these questions. When it comes to the utilization of the supports, around SEL, there are amazing supports that our district provides. What is the rate of utilization for the individuals that are being suspended to those supports that are in our schools? And then when we look at attendance, the individuals that are being suspended, is there a correlation between that and those individuals who are chronically absent? So if we can look into that a little bit, that would be amazing. But I gotta lean on this a little bit. I'm really looking for information or the data aggregated to be able to tell me how are we taking advantage of the SEL supports that we have for those students who clearly are in need of it the most. And that'll be it for me. I appreciate the opportunity to jump on, Commissioner Slater Harrington.
All right, and so you'll take your responses in a follow-up?
Yes.
I will.
I'm sorry. I was the response is yes, I will have the responses in a follow-up. I was taking notes, so thank you. Thank you for those questions.
Great. Commissioner Bay or Chair McFadden, do you have any questions? And then I'll come in last.
Well, I'll yield to Commissioner McFadden because I already have several questions that I just need you to put on for follow-up, and seeing that administration is really a stronghold in Commissioner McFadden, I'd like him to lead off on this one.
I don't have anything particularly. I will allow you, Commissioner Seda Harrington, to move with your questions and your thoughts. One thing that I have noticed as a trend in some school leaders, yes, throughout city schools, they mention, and we've mentioned it with some of our community groups as well, just what the code of conduct looks like for students in theory and then also in practice. I'm not sure what professional learning and development looks like for school leaders as it relates to implementation of that. I don't know what that's like, but I'd be interested in hearing that. And then what are some supports that we can provide to our parents and guardians and our families with them being able to understand what is expected of their children when they're in our spaces, but also what is expected of them when they're engaging in our spaces as well. So those thoughts come to mind as I will flip it back over to Commissioner Slater Harrington.
May I respond to that?
Sure, sure.
Okay. So just two things, because those are two awesome points. In regards to what is expected of us, that is always my big push in training. And so I would invite you to, you can certainly attend the trainings, like when they are virtual or in person, either one, each month. So I can share those dates with you. And that training, the monthly training that I spoke of, is specifically for administrators. But I'm glad that you said what is expected of our children, because I believe that, and this is shared in the professional development, around clear expectations. So just like we as adults, we need clear expectations, our students need clear expectations, and there can be no assumptions that are made. Oftentimes, that was the case. And so as a result, there is a chart that is at the beginning, I believe it's on page 6 of the Code of Conduct, around expectations for everyone. So everyone has clear expectations. So we can't just put a page in the Code of Conduct and say these are the expectations, but it is very clear. And we emphasize this to administrators when you have your professional development, when staff returns, when students return from the very beginning, that you lay out and you explain to them what the expectations are. So there is an expectation pages, and all of the stakeholders are included in that. So students are very clear. The expectations are listed. These are your expectations, students. Staff members, these are your expectations. Parents, these are your expectations. And so again, they need to be communicated in a clear manner. We have heard, because the Code of Conduct is a student code of conduct, but we have heard before, and I'm not sure like where we are on this, but having like a parent kind of code of conduct. But we do have, again, in the student code of conduct, what the clear expectations are for each of the stakeholder groups. So I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Some of it. And I mean, if you have dates for the learning opportunities, you can send those to the board office so that the board's aware. But I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioner Bay, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I wanted to just raise something for follow-up. First of all, my big concern is the continuation of education. I know that at a certain point, if we don't continue education, we do it becomes punitive. instead of restorative. And so I'm just wanting you to follow up with me on some of the restorative aspects of dealing with students that may have stumbled somewhere along the line, and the equity. The second question is of equity of consequence. I see a disparity in consequences within various groups, within various age ranges, within various racial divisions, and also in the special needs category. I see disparities. I just wanted to know how you address that off record, somewhere else, not off record, but take it offline. And the last one is, can you define for me what you mean by, in this new rule, what is non-public? What do you define as non-public schools? Okay, versus, please help me define it because it kind of varies from place to
Nowhere.
place.
So we have students who IEP teams and families feel that their needs cannot be met at Baltimore City Public Schools. So we have non-public schools, such as the Lab School, where they only have students with disabilities in those schools 100% of the time. Harbor School is another non-public schools. We have a Manseth book. These are all schools that are approved by Maryland State Department of Education. And so again, it's just schools some in the county, some in the city, and we do have a couple students in Baltimore City, which we have to send out of state to receive their special education services if needed. So these are schools that we are unable to provide services to our students, so they have to go to a different type of setting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. That just clarified me. And the reportable offenses aspect, we do have that, and that was it. That was the reason why I wanted to know about that, with reportable offenses, because we look at it from on school property versus off of school property, and yet they're all reportable. Is there a separation in there saying, okay, this is what happened in school versus this is what happened anywhere that was reportable? Is there a separation on that?
So yes, so the reportable offenses was passed into law last year. And so for those reportable offenses, again, they are criminal offenses. And so if a student is arrested and participates in certain offenses, again, it's not in school. So what you saw us present to you for data, those are school suspensions.
Okay.
And so
thank you, because I wanted to know whether we separated the reportable off-school grounds, et cetera, versus the suspension or the reportable offenses on school property.
Absolutely. And so our code of conduct says that we can give a suspension for incidents that happen at school or at school grounds or on the way to or from school. So that's all the data that you saw around suspensions. But reportable offenses, they are crimes that happen in it could, they're not in school. They're not on school or school grounds or at school activities, but they are crimes that happen. The student is, arrested, and they must be reported to the school district in which the student attends. So that's what a reportable offense is.
If I may, I think
those numbers are not reflective of anything that happened in the school.
Correct.
At all.
That's correct.
Okay. These are not arrests made with the incident in school.
No.
Okay.
So, Commissioner Bay, am I hearing that and I think we get a presentation from school police on crime data, so anything considered a crime committed in a school building. Is that what your interest is?
Yeah, because I wanted to see, if it can happen in West Virginia and yet be reported because it was a school student and, a Baltimore City school student, then that's not really a clear indication of what's going on in the school system. And that's why I wanted to get a clearer indication if that problem is something reflected in the school situation, the school grounds and school environment, okay, versus outside of the school environment. That's all.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, I was just going to say, so yes, just to clarify, reportable offenses do not happen in school. They are crimes that happen out school, but out of school, or not at school events. However, there is data that you can request from, school police around incidents that happen or arrests that take place in schools. Those
Okay.
are two separate sets of data.
And I
Thank
think that presentation happens in a different committee, I believe. So, all righty. In the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of breeze over, and then I just want to flag that this may come back up in the safety and wholeness. So we may be asking for follow-up and questions to happen in that committee. So just wanted to flag that for staff, because I think that this topic in this this scope of work warrants a lot of discussion and a lot of questions, and so more than what we have to offer today. I want to also flag that some of my interests and concerns overlap with the Office of Climate, as you alluded to in your presentation. So in response or in follow-up, just acknowledging that when you started off, you talked about the code of conduct, and you referred to it in discussion as well. There's a lot of training, and so that's why you say, this is why you're seeing increased incidents. I'm curious about, and we don't have to do this here, but the depth of discussion and review. So our principals and our leaders are being equipped with deep knowledge around the code of conduct. Our students and parents are probably receiving it written, handed to them. But how thoroughly are they going over to make sure that there is deep knowledge established on that side as well? So that's one question I had.
Can I just address that one very quickly?
Sure.
So around the code of conduct, every single year, we have intense stakeholder input. And so because of the stakeholder input that we were hearing from administrators, that was the reason for the overhaul of the code of conduct. But I am I take that very seriously around our stakeholder input. And in those stakeholder sessions, I dedicated this past year an entire week to each stakeholder. So there was a week for various student input. There was a week around various teacher input. There was a week around various administrator input. There was a week around parent input. There was a week around community. We had like 6 different stakeholders, 6 different weeks of different input. And so that is how, so we don't just say, oh, we're going to make this change because, we feel like it, right? All of the changes that are made are around the stakeholder inputs around, around the code of conduct, and they're all stakeholders. Everyone that code of conduct would affect or that it affects, that's who we receive stakeholder input from. And so once changes are made, we go back to those same stakeholders and we say, these are the changes that are made and this is the reason why. Now, as far as the broader group of students, because that's who it applies to, because it is a student code of conduct, we put that onus, or we give that onus to administrators for when students, because that's when they're going to get every single student, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is the onus. We put that on the school so that when the students come back, this is the code of conduct for this year. Again, laying out the very clear expectations. These are the expectations of you, for the school year. This is what has changed, throughout the year. And so we give the professional development to the administrators and to the community and, like the parents, but the student, and we also have a stakeholder session for the students, but that intense, explanation of the student code of conduct is given at the school when the students return at the beginning of the year.
Got it. I need to move us along. So I am going to just ask that I'll be able to give you these topics and then we maybe return back to them. I'm particularly curious about the implementation of restorative practice across the district, the systemic approach to it. I'm glad that you referenced at the end of your presentation how we are restoring students when they come back from suspension and expulsion. I think that is as important as the preventative work, that restorative work that's happening in advance of their suspension and expulsion. It could be a game changer in the repeated offenses. And so I'm glad to see that that work has started, but I'm interested in how we make it more systemic. So I know that there will be overlap again with the Office of Climate, probably with that as well. And then in terms of disproportionality for, in particular, Black males, the suspension rates, I believe the district has a grant around that to address the disproportionality of suspension rates for Black males. I'm not sure, you can confirm or deny that, but I just wanted to know how we are, again, making it more systemic and putting it into practice, and how we are building the capacity of all administrators and teachers to be able to recognize that trend and respond to it accordingly. And I'll hold my other ones because I think that it was in alignment with what Commissioner Muhammad, just a curiosity around the cross-referencing of chronic absenteeism and disengagement from school after multiple infractions, as you called it, or what have you. Yeah. I could talk about this forever, but I'm going to stop now because of time. Thank you for such a thorough and thoughtful presentation. Want to flag for you that we'll probably want to get some more into this in a separate committee, but we'll give you plenty of time and just look forward to your follow-up. I appreciate all your work.
Thank you so much.
All righty. I have to move us along, everybody. We are way behind schedule, but we have had some wonderful presentations so far. That said, next up will be a discussion around the Baltimore City Department of Recreations and Parks Agreement. Maureen, thank you for joining us today. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for having me. My name is Maureen Gershberg. I'm the Director of Facilities Planning and Real Estate for Baltimore City Public Schools. We would typically present all of our items to the Board of Ops, but some items kind of came in after the most recent one, and we wanted to make sure that projects were moving along. So we're presenting today, and we had presented to board leadership last week as well. Per the recommendation of Chair McFadden, we consolidated the information list to a board memo. But the gist of it is basically we have a close relationship with Baltimore City Rec and Parks, since we previously were all under Baltimore City government. So a lot of their land, their facility, a lot of their pools, their rec centers, they're on our land. They're connected to our rec centers. So we work very closely with them. We're also want to ensure that some of the more major items that we work with them on are made public. So this is there's 5 topics that are covered in the memo for projects that we are working with BCRP on. Those 5 projects are the transfer of jurisdiction of 5 rec centers, the subdivision of Hazelwood parcel, easement at Walter P. Carter to allow for a pool, and a very, very minor lot line adjustment at Professional Development Center. And then we're also going to be rebuilding 2 of their rec centers at schools where we're having major CIP projects, just because it makes sense from a logistics standpoint. They're going to be paying for it, and we're doing agreements that draft out how they're paying for it. But we have the people, the crew on site. So again, we're collaborating with them. Does anyone have any questions about some of the items?
I do. I'll ask my fellow commissioners, do they have any questions? Commissioner Bay?
Yes, you knew it. I just had a question. I just wanted to know about the, looking at your maps in the memo, I just needed to know about areas served, Parks and Rec map of disbursement of these changes, and the community dynamics of what they changed. as far as the service of these communities, okay? I know you're sharing properties and there's a whole lot of things going on between city schools and Parks and Rec, but I just want to make sure that we get a clear picture of that. And that's it. I take it somewhere later, but I just wanted to give a clarification.
Can I clarify your question, Commissioner Bay, because I think it might be in alignment with mine, and particularly with regard to programming that is happening in those spaces where we would assume responsibility, the transfer of the 5 recs. You know, community may know and love the use of those spaces, and now with it transitioning to city schools, what is the plan for programming? How does all of that transition, and have we anticipated the impact on community and, you know, being proactive and planning?
Yeah, so a number of those have been empty for some of them have been empty for some time, and then some of them haven't had BCRP programming in there for years. Some of these date back to an agreement that was generated in 2012 and then expired in 2018. There was some not the best paperwork that happened, and so unofficially we still maintained those rec centers even after 2018. And so the people that have been in so at Barclay, at Leith Walk, and at Liberty, those were ones that the BCRP had let us lease back in 2012, and that we kept carrying it over even after it expired. So we've actually had our partners in there for several years. And so we're going to be maintaining those partners going forward, which this transfer of jurisdiction is just us kind of making sure we've checked all the legal boxes on it. At Hazelwood, BCRP hasn't been doing programming there for quite some time. And actually the subdivision that's happening, that other agenda item, is allowing them to build a standalone rec center where they will have programming. So they haven't been offering programming. We're going to move into the space and use it for academic purposes. And their intention is that eventually they will be able to offer programming with their brand new rec center. And then for the last one, at Callaway, that actually, that's a gray area also. And so again, this is us just kind of cleaning up things, saying, okay, this is officially ours now. The Boys and Girls Club has been in there for several years, I think possibly even like 10 years.
Years.
So that's another partner that, again, we're putting an agreement with, and it's just kind of solidifying what's already happening.
Understood. Thank you. Commissioner McFadden, Chair McFadden, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Maureen. I think you've satisfied all of our questions, and I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
All righty. My friend has been ready for a while. We're moving on to our next agenda item, which is a compliance report, IGE on curriculum. Thank you so much for staying on and being ready to present now.
Of course. Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. So I'm Christina Byers, Deputy Chief Academic Officer, and I am here this afternoon to do a brief presentation regarding our compliance report for policy IGE, which is our curriculum policy. So just quickly, IGE does require city schools to come before the board annually to update you on our curriculum management plan. And so before we begin, I do just want to highlight that in the summary report for the compliance report, you do have a link to our full 17-page curriculum management plan. This afternoon, I am going to just be highlighting some of the updates since we were with you around this time last year. So our agenda for this afternoon, we're going to begin by grounding always in our district policies, our goals, and our initiatives. I am going to share with you the specific updates that have been made to our curriculum management plan. I'm going to focus on our curriculum review cycle that is part of that plan, and then I'm going to conclude with some next steps. So for some grounding this afternoon, we always like to ground our presentations in our board priorities. And so policy IGE and our curriculum management plan really speaks to priorities 1, 4, 6, and 7. I do want to highlight that obviously when we're talking about curriculum, we are talking about how we cross several sectors of the work that we do. You can keep going to the next slide. Our curriculum touches all 4 of our district goals. And so while we just heard a little bit about SEL and wholeness, that does tie into our curriculum. And obviously we are grounded in our goals of literacy, mathematics, and graduation. I do want to, before I move into the updates for the curriculum management plan for this year, I do want to just anchor us in our approach to accelerated learning, because much of what is embedded in our curriculum management plan does speak to the way we go about considering how we accelerate learning for our students. And so as you are all aware, this speaks to our prioritized standards, looking at skills that are required for our students to acquire those standards, how we go through diagnosing our students' readiness for grade level standards, moving through our teaching. And I just want to highlight that our grade level core curriculum, our high quality instructional materials, are a critical part and component of the curriculum management plan that you have in the summary report. And finally, I just want to highlight that this is our annual update around IGE. And so dissimilar to last year when we came before you, there have been no changes to our high quality instructional materials that you see highlighted on this screen. All right, so let's get into the plan update for school 23-24. We can go on to the next slide. I do want to just orient you to the curriculum management plan before I get into the updates. It is, again, a lengthy document, but it does serve as a framework for how we organize, evaluate curriculum, and provide professional learning. And so the actual management plan is divided into 4 larger sections. The first is how we go about adopting or developing curriculum. The second is how we implement that adopted or developed curriculum. Then how we monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of the curriculum. And then finally, the document speaks to how we provide professional learning and development to our staff in order to be able to implement curriculum. All right, so what are some of our key updates to the plan this year? There are 4 of them. One is that you will notice in the updated version of the curriculum management plan, we have included for the first time how it is aligned to our board priorities, to our district goals. And now that we have Maryland's blueprint, we also have aligned our curriculum management plan to the blueprint for Maryland's future, which we all also know as CURWIP. Additionally, we have added in the area of curriculum content 2 new areas. So in previous iterations of our management plan, we defined what an adopted curriculum meant versus a developed curriculum. In this iteration of our plan, we have also included definitions for integrated curriculum and supplemental curriculum. Thirdly, we have revised our curriculum review cycle. And then finally, this latest iteration is inclusive of how we are using professional learning, specifically coaching, in order to support the implementation of curriculum. For the remainder of this presentation, I am going to zero in on what you see highlighted in gold. So I'm going to spend the remainder of our time together just talking about what we mean by integrated curriculum and supplemental curriculum. And then I would also like to highlight our revised curriculum review cycle. All right, so 2 new editions of curriculum. Again, we had the adopted, we had the developed. We are now calling out and defining what it means to have an integrated curriculum. And so in integrated curriculum, one of the easiest ways to think of this is that we do have standards in our curriculum that really aren't just specific content geared, meaning they don't just live in mathematics, they don't just live in literacy, but rather they actually cross multiple curriculums. And so some great examples of standards that you would see in an integrated curriculum include things like environmental literacy. Environmental literacy isn't just part of science. It really crosses multiple different content areas. Another great example of that are our financial literacy standards. They aren't just math standards, but rather they cross multiple disciplines. And so we did think it was important to begin defining what integrated curriculum looks like and sounds like. Additionally, we felt it was important to define what supplemental curriculum means. Supplemental curriculums are really those curriculums that are in addition to our core curriculum aligned to standards. And so a great example of this would be our personalized learning platforms. So in addition to the core, which in many instances are our high quality instructional materials, we supplement those high quality instructional materials with additional resources for our teachers, many times to be able to attend to the needs of our diverse learners. And so again, I just wanted to highlight that those are two new definitions you will see in the curriculum management plan. We'll go on to the next slide. So I do want to spend some time talking about the curriculum review cycle. Again, the curriculum review cycle is really designed to ensure that we in the Office of Academics have a plan in order to review our curriculum, and curriculum review is inclusive of feedback from our stakeholders. And so this cycle is designed to ensure that we have a plan to do that. What is new and what we had to consider as we went into this latest iteration of our curriculum management plan was that not all content and curriculum had been included in the previous review cycle. And so when we get to the cycle, I will highlight for you where we have added new content and curriculum to that cycle. Additionally, as we look to our new priorities, Maryland's blueprint is a great example of a new priority. As we look to new priorities, it's important that we revisit the timeline that had been previously outlined for the years in which we will review specific content and curriculum. And we have had to make adjustments to the timeline of that cycle in light of these new priorities. And then finally, one of the things that I want to highlight and emphasize this afternoon is that while we, and I'm going to share it with you, while we do assign a timeline of review, that doesn't preclude us from reviewing curriculum outside of the timeline, or perhaps out of order of the timeline, based on what we see as needs and priorities from the way schools are implementing curriculum, for the way that we may be governed for our curriculum. And so I just want to highlight that while I'm going to really show you the defined timeline, we consider the curriculum review cycle a very dynamic and a very fluid process based on changing and shifting landscape and priorities. And so here is our updated cycle. The first thing I want to highlight on this slide is I did speak on the previous slide to the fact that one of the revisions we made is that we added content and curriculum that wasn't previously included in the cycle in iterations that the board may have previously seen. A great example of that is pre-K curriculum. We are in the process of adopting a brand new pre-K curriculum, and so you see that in the 24-25 review cycle. Pre-K curriculum didn't exist in previous iterations of this cycle. Additionally, as I pointed out earlier, we are now paying attention to our integrated and supplemental curriculums, and so you will see them reflected in this newly revised cycle. They too had not been highlighted in the previous cycle. So I just want to walk you through the way we intend to review curriculum in this cycle. For school year 24-25, we will be looking at our newly adopted pre-K curriculum. SHAPE, which is an acronym which we love in education, stands for Science, Health, and PE, as well as Social Studies. In school year 25-26, we will be looking at English Language Arts. In 26-27, this is new content. we are going to review our CTE curriculum. CTE had not been previously included. We've now included it and we've put it on the 5-year cycle. In school year 27-28, we'll be looking at math and fine arts. And then again, in school year 28-29, those integrated and supplemental curriculums. I am going to reiterate that while we do map this out in a 5-year plan, this is a dynamic, fluid process. And so we may elect to review curriculum outside of the order that you see on the screen, again, depending on the shifts in our landscape. And then finally, I would just like to wrap up this afternoon by talking about our next steps as it pertains to the curriculum management plan that is included in your compliance report for IGE. We will continue to review in alignment with our priorities and our data and our state level guidance, what needs to be adjusted in this curriculum management plan. We will also maintain the plan. Maintaining the plan, again, speaks to the links that are included in the plan. You will notice that in the plan, you have a link to all of the standards based on content. And part of our maintenance of the plan is making sure that all of those links are up to date and that they are linking to the most recent iteration of standards that we have aligned to the different content. Professional learning is a tremendous part of our curriculum management plan. We outline professional learning for our leaders and our teachers and our staff, our paraeducators, in alignment with this plan, and we will continue to do so. And then finally, we will just prepare for the school year 24-25 curriculum review cycle, which again is pre-K, it is SHAPE, and I think I'm forgetting one more, it is social studies. And so we will be preparing for the review of those curriculums in compliance with that curriculum review cycle. So again, this was just a brief presentation to align to the compliance report. Happy to take any questions at this time.
Wow, that was a lot in a little. Thank you for the thorough review, but also for your conciseness and your brevity. And you're right. We educators, we love acronyms. I don't have a question in particular, but I do care deeply about the professional development associated because I think that that is the key to adoption, implementation, and as educators, we have to be concerned about how well we are receiving and then demonstrating in our classrooms. So I just want to amplify that point, and I would be interested in future presentations around professional development. But like I see our chair has turned his camera on. Do you have any questions?
I don't know if it is a question. Hello, Christina, Ms. Byers. It is more of a, I appreciate the addition of the integrated and the supplemental curriculum in this particular update. With that, I will ask for some examples to be provided of those two areas. And if we could also ensure, I don't know where it would be, maybe on the website, maybe somewhere where families and potential vendors may be able to see the type of focus that we have on it. I will also say that the board engaged in dialogue with the City Council's Education Committee last week, and financial literacy was something that came up. And we shared with them, similarly to what you mentioned, right? It's integrated, it's embedded in different areas. But the reason why I'm asking for some of the examples to be published somehow is so folks can see the thread, right, and the integration, so that they're then able to advocate and articulate the learning that's happening and ways that we can improve should we need to.
Thank you. I'm just writing, taking notes. Thank you.
Yep, thank you all.
Excellent point, Chair. I do not see Commissioner Bay. Are you still here? Do you have any questions?
I wouldn't be going anywhere.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Kenyatta Bay.
But no, real quick, I just wanted you, as you do your curriculum review and evaluation going forward, I just wanted to understand and not now, but the teacher, the people on the ground that have to implement these curriculums, I want to know what their input structure looks like, because that becomes essential, I mean, it becomes essential, bada boom, bada bing.
Absolutely. And it is, as I said, the reason we put it in a cycle is because part of the review process is to get stakeholder input. So happy to do that. Because I think you were asking for what that structure looks like. Is that correct, Commissioner?
Especially from the standpoint of the educator, the class person that has to actually implement this curriculum.
Okay, we can follow up on that.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All righty. Thank you so much for the, again, thorough yet brief presentation. We're going to move on in the interest of time. We've reached our time. And so what I will do for the purposes of this meeting is consolidate the procurement agenda and just ask commissioners if they have any questions regarding any of the procurement items.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Questions I have concerning that I will forward, because all I want is reports on effectiveness of standing applications, whether or not, and I'm not seeing real strong indications or data on the effectiveness of a lot of these items. Yeah, it works, but I'm not seeing the real data yet. And I do need to dig a little deeper, so I'm not going to put that forward now, okay?
I would concur with Commissioner Bay. I'm particularly interested in evidence of effectiveness with the Flippin group and just broadly the adoption of SEL curriculum in the district. So my questions are both around the Flippin group, but also more systemic again. Yeah, yep.
Chair Slater Harrington.
Yes.
So what I will, and good evening, Shabre. What I do know is that there are items, right? Like when we're engaging in the procurement process, we're approving, particular board letters for schools and programs to choose to use, almost like a menu. What I hear you saying, though, with this particular item, right, this is a portion, at least it should be, of a broader SEL programmatic approach, and you'd like more information around that, but then also how that fits into what we're being asked to approve tonight and next week. And then just to go back to Commissioner Bay's question or his thoughts around evidence of effectiveness, same with Commissioner Slater Harrington. I'm curious to know, when you all send your thoughts in, I'm curious to know what you're thinking, because I think we hear about the evidence of effectiveness, right, when it comes to us in board letters not necessarily being enough. And so I want to kind of get under that to support staff and making sure that they know what information commissioners are really looking for. And for the sake of the members of the public, and in our communities, how we're planning to spend, money. I think that's important. So I would be interested to know what the questions are when you all send them in, because I think it's important that we kind of help with that. It's inconsistent, Shabre, and it's not necessarily on you, but it's on whoever's drafting these procurement letters, right? So we want to be able to support you in guidance to be able to provide them as they're getting their letters together, so that things are cohesive, they're very clear, and we're informed as governors as to how we're approving, this menu of options for schools and programs to choose from.
Commissioner or Chair McFadden, thank you for that summation. Shabre, did I just cut you off? I'm sorry.
No, I said I was saying thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You did sum up some of my concern. I do understand, and not only just this procurement, but in other items where schools have elected and allocated funding in their budgets for said item. But you are right that I am particularly, while I have questions about the evidence of effectiveness for this particular item, what I saw was a theme, to your point, where we're relying simply on student survey data, or in one instance, we're relying on data from another state when this program has been implemented in our schools for beyond 1 year or 2 years. And so I just need to understand what our local data is, or our district data is saying in that instance. And so you're right. And we can talk about that and get into it deeper. But yes.
With that, though, Commissioner, is Ms. Stokes here? I know she drafted this. Is she with us? Hey there.
Yes, I am here. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So this is the time where we can kind of just flush this out before it comes to the full board next week. So Commissioner Slater-Harrington, if there are specific thoughts, I would be interested to hear Ms. Stokes as well, as she's our Director of Wholeness.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. I'll let you share your specific questions.
Yeah, I want to hear more about, particularly with the Flippin group, the evidence of effectiveness. I've kind of outlined a couple of concerns, but just beyond student survey, we just had a big discussion on suspension and expulsion. So as you might understand, I'm trying to do some correlation and drawing lines.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely think we can update this letter to make sure it has more specific data related to suspensions in our schools, as well as how it has supported attendance overall in the schools that the Flippin group has been consistently supporting in. So we have a set of schools, some of our 100% schools that use the Flippin group or Capturing Kids' Hearts. And then we have another set of schools where the intensive sites might use Capturing Kids' Hearts. It's really more of, it helps schools to create consistent routines, consistent processes, like a shared language. It focuses in on when we talk about embedding SEL and opportunities for making connections, building community. It's really more of a programmatic structure that says, let's do these consistent routines in all classes across all grade bands so that we have a shared language. That there's consistency across what students can expect when they go from room to room, from grade level to grade level. And they do have their own internal rubric that shows the growth and if schools are actually implementing those particular strategies. So we can definitely go back and add that in particular too, because I think that gives insight in terms of how the schools have changed over time, or protocols that they've implemented that allows for the reduction in referrals and the increase in attendance or the decrease in suspension. So we can definitely add that information into this letter to be more specific.
Thank you for that. because fidelity to the model is important in making the difference and realizing the actual point of the procurement. I do have a question about it because I crosswalk a particular school from the previous discipline presentation with it being one of the schools listed. It won't inhibit me, participating in a vote on this, but I do have a question that I would like to follow up with you offline.
Okay, sure.
Commissioner Bay, do you have any further questions, or are you prepared to take the rest of yours offline? All right, hearing none, I'm going to move us along. I'm looking at.
You're hearing none. I was looking over one of the documents again, just to be sure, and I have none. I can move forward.
Okay, great. And thank you for your leadership, Chair McFadden. I appreciate your help clarifying and moving us along. All righty. We do have one person here for public comment. I hope that person is still here. Rachel Simonson. Is Rachel Simonson still here for public comment? Okay. I am going to ask staff to follow up with that individual, just recognizing that we're over time and they may have had to drop from the call. All right.
Yes, we got it. Thank you, Commissioner Harrington. This is Tanisha.
All righty. Thank you. I know your voice. All righty. We're going to sum up today's meeting. Our next meeting, again, virtual, we can look forward to some math updates and literacy goal updates that will take place on December 5th at 3:30, same time, same place. Again, if you are in the public and you would like to participate, please contact our board office no later than the Monday prior, so December 4th, to make your intentions known. Before I close out, I will say, is there anything else, Chair McFadden? Great. Well, we have now gone from working in the day to working in the dark. So I will disband us and adjourn the meeting, and we look forward to seeing you in December.
Peace.